to the MLB Deeper Dive presented by Awesemo.com. Got a nice little 6-game slate tonight that could turn into a 5-game slate. Could be pretty interesting. Got Gundaker with me. You're.
A little more energy.
Does your not mean what's up? I was expecting a little bit more there.
It's like a greeting, a hello, but what's up, Alex? Hope you're doing all right. It looks like a fun day of a little wonky baseball. It feels like a dog day of summer with a couple of doubleheaders, suspended games, a little weather, hangover from last night, and chop slates on 2 sites. So I'm going to have fun trying to navigate this one.
Definitely. So today the Washington Nationals Reds game on Draftkings, but not on Fanduel. That one's a 7-inning one. So different lock times. Let's talk a little bit about the weather last night because, I thought it would have been hilarious if after Stroman's big fuss he put up over that postponed game earlier in the season, if then they played when the Yankees postponed, but I thought that was pretty written in on the wall that was going to get postponed, but I didn't know that the Nats game was going to be suspended. That was a little bit of a surprise. Did you make any adjustments last night for that?
Not for that game, but we kind of joked about it earlier, and you've been around for a long time. The Nationals seem to always be attached to weird weather decisions. So I didn't plan for it, but when it happened, I wasn't surprised because it's the Nats.
We kind of dodged a bullet, those of us that had some good lineups going with guys in that game, because before last year, that would have gone down as zeros for everyone because games under 5 innings were not official. But they made some rule change that now it only gets suspended, so you got credit. Now, that was kind of a nice little relief for those of us that maybe cashed because of that. But having a game that only goes 4 innings, that pretty much kills your lineup. So tonight we got this game in Chicago that the precipitation probability is pretty darn high. So what have you made of that game today?
So the thing that stuck out the most, if our players are on both sites, FanDuel and DraftKings included the Nats game, FanDuel did not. So FanDuel slate wouldn't start for an extra hour. But if that White Sox game does get called at 8:10 p.m. Eastern, the first game that starts would be 9:40 p.m. Eastern. So it could be a true West Coast slate as a main slate. And that's a little bit, for me, a little bit more fun to throw 150 at. If you got 4 games to choose from, you could really play some leverage with some main slate money. But yeah, weather-wise, I think it is. I guess it's fortunate that it's the first game, so if it does get called before it starts, we can easily just swap out. We don't have other games to stress about. So if it's going to happen, at least we can kind of control it on FanDuel. And DraftKings is fine too, and DraftKings puts you in a weird position too because that Nationals game is only going to be 7 innings. So you talked about yesterday, we had 4 innings, and our normal slate 4 innings is something that that's only 2 at bats. Maybe we don't go there. But today we got to deal with the 7-inning game theory of Sonny Gray versus Strasburg, which I think is a plus for pitchers because you might steal a complete game. But hitting wise, it's not like it's cupcake matchups either. So a lot of game theory to be thought out here.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a relief that we got 2 good pitchers on the mound here in Washington. So let's start with this game. 7 innings. The over/under is 6.5. So I guess if you extrapolate that to 9 innings, that'd be like a 7.5. So still pretty low. Now, Strasburg has had 1 start since coming off the IL. It looks like he hasn't had his best stuff so far this year. What have you made so far of Strasburg's performance?
Yeah, his xFIP Sierra well into the 5s right now, 16.7% walk rate. The first game back, if you're results orientated, you would have took 21 DKP at 8.5K. But if you read between the tea leaves, he only went 5.1 innings, 72 pitches, 4 walks, and just 4 strikeouts. So he did have a higher ground out to error ratio, but it wasn't like it was a dominating game. One or two hits away from him having another really, really mediocre to below average outing. And today he catches a Reds team that this is a weird spot coming off of a suspended game. They got a little bit of more intense batting practice in. They're already a team that's a little bit pesky when it comes to offense. They will strike out if you can go out there and put out some good stuff. This projected lineup really only has one guy, Jesse Winker, with a sub 24% K rate. So I do think like if you're on and Strasburg can be the Strasburg we know, like he can get there, but I think I need to see it before I gamble on it. Just a 9% swing and strike rate so far. The whip's a little too high for comfort. Maybe in the, like I said, the grand scheme of the slate, like if he ate up 7 innings and got that complete game, it's a little cheapy, but it's possible. Maybe there's a chance I throw him in a player pool because this could be a 5-game slate on DraftKings. And then Sonny Gray, I'm a little bit more confident in Sonny Gray, but again, the top half of the Nats lineup a little bit hard to get through. But if once you get through like Turner, Soto, Bell, like it falls off a cliff when it comes to ISO and WOBA. The strikeout potential not as high, but again, I do think this is a good spot if these guys are throwing strikes to get deep into a game and a little bit more likely to hold on to a win, even if you don't grab the CG, just because there's less innings between you and the closer.
Yeah. Man, I'm still stuck on Strasburg here. So he's only pitched 20 innings over the past 2 years. So I do notice his velocity on his fastball is down from 94 to 92. So I'm a little bit worried. He's kind of chalky today too. Oh, gosh. So in general, are you going to roster any stacks from a 7-inning game, or would you be a complete fader regardless?
Yeah. So 7 innings basically gives it's going to take away at least one round of at bats, but if you're getting through the order, it might be worth 1.5. Like I said, I think that's an ultimate game theory spot. I think if the pitcher's projected worse, at least on the Sonny Gray side, like I'd definitely be way more inclined to attack it. I think the quality of their plate appearances versus the plate appearances in some of these later games isn't really that much. We're not leaving a ton on the table. Like the Nats have a 3.2 run total. We look at these late games. The Cards and the D-backs game starts flirting with 5, but some of these others are still 4.3 and below. So what's half a run to 0.8 of a run worth it if it's a home run and a couple stolen bases from guys like Trey Turner and Juan Soto. So because the slate is this small, I do probably still cherry pick from this game. I'd probably have to circle the wagons back after we digested the last 4 games to really know if I want to dedicate resources to stacking their team. But looking at this Reds team, like if they're healthy and this is their projected lineup, there's absolutely a range of outcomes where a Suarez, a Winker, Nick Castellanos, they do well. And, one at bat, hitting a homer in your first at bat, you're pretty much there. So I'm not banking on the whole team to homer in their first at bat, but you only need as many at bats as it takes to hit a bomb, maybe get on base and swipe a bag or two. So I probably will at least cherry pick. I'm going to reserve the right to refuse service to a stack depending on the last 4 games and the White Sox, because foreshadow a little bit. I love White Sox versus lefties, but if I'm not going to have that game, I got to send those lineups somewhere.
Yeah, definitely is looking like that might not happen. So that would be only 4 games plus the 7-inning one. Eytan, man, what's up?
Yes. Never good to be late when you're doing a show with a boss. I understand. That's like rule number 1A to never break, right? So how's everybody doing? I appreciate your patience. Of course, I got jammed. If anybody knows the South Jersey to Philadelphia area, it's brutal if you ever get trapped in that. And I've been really good over the past 6 months. And maybe that's with all COVID going on here. But what's up? I appreciate you both taking over and doing quasi host and analyst roles, so I'm sure. So thank you both. It's always a pleasure to see both of you guys here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't actually leave the house these days, so I can't quite relate with the traffic, but we all understand. Anyway,
Yes, understandably so. So I'm, of course, jumping into something where you've already had the good fortune, of course, with Gundaker starting the show. So as I just jump in with Gun talking about, the stack and staying away, just let's keep going and kind of catch me up to speed as far as, are we still looking, have we moved to stacks? Have we exhausted the pitchers on the slate tonight? We want to move, game by game. I'm just going to follow the flow and then kind of seamlessly take over to where it wasn't even like I was late. That's the plan, at least.
Awesome. Yeah, so we're going game by game. And now the first game is like a 7-inning one, so it's like a big disadvantage for stacks. The pitchers can be all right, and I wanted to get Gundaker's opinion on Sonny Gray. I feel like a really solid pitcher that maybe doesn't get enough hype. 29% K rate this year, but the matchup versus Washington is on the tougher side. So, how are you prioritizing Gray tonight?
Yeah, so I definitely will have exposure to Gray if like the matchup isn't one that I would seek out for strikeout hunting per se. I do think he could steal a couple here and there, but I think what benefits me the most for Gray is his elite ground ball rate, and this year is a little bit lower than it has been historically the last couple of years. So I'm expecting it to go up even more. The line drive rate is scary, a 27% line drive rate to both sides of the plate, but if he can almost like in this spot, I almost want just like a strikeout per inning and throw strikes, get that ground ball and steal. I really want to steal a complete game. I love these 7-inning games for swiping a cheapie on a complete game. And who knows if you get that SO added to it. So I'm going to have some of them. I think he's too talented on what could be a 4.5 game slate to not have him. You look at some of the other pitchers on the slate later on. I mean, we have a Dodgers team that doesn't have a pitcher yet. Alex Wood against the Dodgers. Like, he is easily, other than Ohtani, like top pitcher on the slate name wise. And depending on where you think Strasburg is really at or could be after today, like I don't see a way out of him, even if the matchup isn't comfortable. Like, you might just accept 20 DKP as a top 3 scorer on this slate.
Yeah.
Have you guys, sorry, Alex.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask about looking at that cheaper option that Gundaker mentioned as far as Strasburg tonight, if that's even a thought of a pivot, knowing that you're going to save, at least on DK, $1,400 or $1,200 overall.
I feel like this is kind of a prove-it game for me for Strasburg because he barely has pitched over the past 2 years. I mean, he's won a lot of money for us in the past. In addition, I see the temperature, 82 degrees. We know Strasburg, once it exceeds 80 degrees, always gets blown up. I mean, not for real, but he's risky and super popular today, so I don't know exactly what to make of him.
Yeah, that ownership makes the ownership projection makes it much more interesting to fade, because if he does elevate himself as the highest owned pitcher, you're looking for a little bit of leverage opportunity on a small slate. He could be the ultimate leverage if you stay away from him and he, gets blown up and stays under 15 DKP. I'm willing to put myself opposite the field if they all had, a 15 or less DKP Strasburg at 50 to 60%. Right now, looking at 40%. But if that White Sox game gets yanked from us, Dylan Cease is going to represent 30% of the field that needs to put that money somewhere. So it might just inflate Strasburg even more so to where he's way more over-owned than he should be.
Yeah, and Alex, just looking at the stack tools that we have available, of course, on Awesemo.com, these two teams, and looking at this game specifically on the slate, they're right there at the bottom of what you have as far as just the top stack percentage: 3.8, 3.6, Cincinnati, Washington. Contrarian play for either one of these. I don't know if that's ever appealing for you guys, especially when we look at this shorter slate, to maybe take a long shot of a punt type risk.
It's just the fact that it's a 7-inning game and the pitchers are pretty good. I feel like it does make it probably a bad move in the long run to stack these teams. So not saying it couldn't work, but they're definitely at the bottom of the list for a good reason.
What about any one-offs that you could take advantage of, Gundaker, knowing, of course, the short game scenario that we're trying to take advantage of, maybe from a pitching standpoint, but on the opposite, staying away from the stacks? Is there anybody that you could still justify going to here via cost or just expected return in this game that might kind of offset the short 7-inning game itself?
Yeah, absolutely. Juan Soto, Trey Turner, guys that can bomb still bases. You got, I mean, they're ultimate premiums at an average of $6K each for, at least one less at bat, but the home team might even get, fewer at bats if they're playing with a lead. And then the Reds, I think the Reds, I'll make a stronger case just because if I'm going to fade Strasburg for leverage and hope he either gets beat up or leave the game injured, maybe I grab these Reds bats as guys that did the damage. Jesse Winker would float to the top of my interest chart there. Maybe Eugenio Suarez, Nick Castellanos, those three guys. But yeah, stacking becomes a lot more risky when you chop off the end of the game. And the end of the game, the way closers are in baseball these days, usually that last inning is not that important, but now the bridge to that guy is even shorter. So, a high-end starter handing the ball over to the closer is a real possibility for these 7-inning games. And that definitely is a lot harder to get through. But leverage-wise, if I'm going to be opposite Strasburg, I'm going to have to invest in the Reds and try to cash in on it.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, can you kind of apply that same line of thinking? And maybe there's a name or two that you like that Gundaker isn't playing that you would like to at least focus on as well?
Honestly, you got a 7-inning game, but the prices look the same. I assume it's because they pretty much posted this before that game was suspended. So I think you're just better off Xing all these guys off and calling it a day here, to be honest.
That's fair. We can definitely move on. White Sox hosting Baltimore, right, we think, tonight. And just a reminder, as we mentioned, the top stacks, and that's available to you today, part of the premium package that you get, free premium tools that normally are available to you via the Awesemo Plus package. And look, that's $29.95 for the week, and you're going to get everything possible on the site. We do streamline some things. If you're specifically interested in MLB DFS, then you can sign up now. The Awesemo Plus MLB Weekly package is $15.95, but really for $10 extra, you're going to get everything across the board. And you never know, you might even pop into something like PGA or NBA that you may not normally play or may not normally focus on. You hear one show, you see one tool on there on the site. Next thing you know, you're going to be fully inundated on that. And you're thinking, yeah, it's probably worth it in hindsight that I did sign up. $29.95. So the MLB top stacks, what we'll continue to use today throughout with Alex and Gundaker here, just to kind of look ahead at how they're gauging their own plays, as well as what Alex has online on the site, Awesemo.com, the Awesemo Plus package. So let's look at Baltimore, the White Sox, of course, and just starting here with pitchers, you have two different guys. Alex, we can start with you. You have two different guys, at least on the opposite end of the cost spectrum here for DK. Do you approach it in any different element now that we kind of come back to the full game on the short slate?
Are we still on Strasburg and Gray, or
no? Move to the real games now.
Okay, so the White Sox Baltimore game, I'm just anticipating we're gonna have to cross this one off because the precipitation probability in Chicago is very high, like all night. So I'll have to tell my fiance to take an umbrella tonight. But I don't think there's going to be any MLB action in Chicago. I mean, if there was, Cease is a good pitcher, but I'm just crossing this off for now.
Fair enough. I mean, should we just redline the game entirely? Or is there any back end hypothetical scenarios to explore here? I mean, it's your world, guys. So you tell me as far as if it's even worth exploring, plays and angles on a game that is 95% right now, pretty much going to be washed out.
I think the like if it played, obviously the White Sox would be the most sought after stack. And then Dylan Cease right now represents almost 30% ownership. I think what the field, or at least our users, should be doing is preparing the pivots, right? If it did play, if they ended up playing through rain, sure. If it did play, it would play through rain, which makes me less interested in the pitcher. But also, if it didn't play, where's that ownership going, right? Where's that 30% on Dylan Cease going? And where's that, what do we say, almost 20% on the stack? Where's that going in terms of ownership on the rest of the site on DraftKings? Because then it would become a 4-game slate. And then the game theory and where to land on certain stacks really plays into strategic decisions. And I think if I'm looking at the DraftKings slate, I think it would increase the ownership on the aforementioned Strasburg, who's already projected to be the highest owned pitcher. It might pump up Sonny Gray, and then past that, only Shohei Ohtani and maybe Alex Wood are comfortable clips in terms of the least of the best of the worst. So I think I would be wanting to project how that game being removed impacts everything else in terms of ownership. And then even more so, we talked about the FanDuel side. FanDuel would be a 4-game slate. DraftKings would be 4.7. On FanDuel, you'd only get Ohtani and Alex Wood in terms of pitchers that you might lean on a little bit more. The rest of the pitchers on the slate is rough. So it absolutely does a ton of damage to the slate in terms of what people might have prepared for in the morning, in terms of ownership from themselves, from the field, for the pitching options. So that's what I would think if it played. I love the White Sox. I probably wouldn't be that enamored with Cease if they said they would try to play, just because we could see a couple delays, and that's probably not great. But that's about what I would do with it. I wouldn't overthink it. We like White Sox versus lefties.
Well, Alex, looking at, and I see Alex Wood getting some love here on the stream, a name that Gundaker just mentioned as far as where ownership could pivot, especially when this game gets washed out. 6,900 on DK. Clearly, there's a risk involved of who he's pitching against. Do you like at least taking a risk, throwing Wood as a P2 tonight, knowing that you can take whatever is left over from this game that gets canceled, especially from Cease standpoint, if people were spending 9,200, and maybe have a more balanced P1, P2, or just pour in on Sonny Gray and maybe an Alex Wood?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think on FanDuel, it's kind of intriguing because you're going to be making your lineups for the lack of this game. And then if it doesn't happen, then you have another hour to make lineups. So if you wanted to go all out, you would just make lineups as if this game's going to happen. And then if it gets postponed, you would then start the process all over again. In which case, I think Cease, especially on FanDuel, looks pretty good. I'm rerunning the ownership here. So if you guys refresh, you can see it as if this game is less likely to play. But just because I don't have all that time, I'm probably going to assume this one doesn't happen until there's reason to believe it does.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the ownership update, maybe Bassitt later there, but you pretty much have as expected. And Gundaker, you mentioned Ohtani, 7,700. And outside of people just pouring on Strasburg tonight and that confidence play, it looks like Ohtani's getting a lot of love, at least on DraftKings. Wood as well, another guy that you mentioned in there. So it looks like just based off of ownership and lower cost pitchers, people have already planned that pivot.
Yeah, and Ohtani's on DraftKings 7.7. Like, I think,
yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked if he started competing with Strasburg by the end of the night.
All right, so let's look now. I mean, the game is tough, right, from the projected standpoint, and as far as stacks are concerned, the White Sox clearly, and then that also comes in with one-offs and uniques that you'd want to run in your lineup from this team, but as Alex said, really from the jump here, we kind of have to move on. And people already, as you look at ownership projections, and building lineups, people are already moving on with the assumption that this thing isn't going to happen. So speaking of Ohtani, we now have, and we can move on kind of a little bit later into that game, but the next one here in Arizona, we have Cardinals in Arizona. And now everything from the pitcher standpoint, right? And Gundaker, we can start with you here on this matchup from a pitching standpoint, but now we're factoring in at least, and I guess we should move on, right, with the assumption, fellas, that this Orioles-White Sox game isn't going to play. So then now factoring in that with Peacock, Martinez, two lower cost guys, especially Matt Peacock tonight, I don't know how much this may open up a P2 option for you, Gundaker, knowing, of course, that Orioles-White Sox game is out and the first one is only 7 innings.
Yeah, so the 7 innings is great for the pitchers. The D-backs game.
I meant that as a positive, factoring in the negative. Sorry.
Yeah. You mentioned Seymour and Peacock. There's, if I had those guys, it wouldn't be at any type of ownership. Maybe cap at 6%, just see what happens. But I really don't have front end interest. I'd be going right into this next game, Athletics and Angels, and I would be on Ohtani heavily, and assuming he does DH, it would make me a little less interesting Bassitt, but I probably end up with Bassitt no matter what. His Sierra xFIP been pretty strong, under 3.6. ERA is right in line with it, and the swing and strike rate is a little bit above what you might expect from Bassitt, but we got more innings to sample size this season than he pitched last year. So Bassitt easily becomes one of the few playable pitchers just because he's stretched out. He's in A+ park, and the Angels offense is looking less menacing by the day. And I'm fine with that. So I don't even mind stacking pitchers in that game and trying to throw a blanket on the win.
But staying far away from St. Louis, Arizona. Fair enough to say you're on that same vein there, Alex.
I think, St. Louis, Arizona looks like a great game to stack. Temperature in Arizona is 96 degrees today. And it looks like I'm kind of wondering if the roof's open here because the over-under is 9.5.
Yeah, it's projected to be open right now.
It's going to be open. Okay, so that's great batting conditions. And you have two pitchers that are pretty shaky at this point. Carlos Martinez, only a 12% K rate this year. And Peacock, probably a replacement level player. So I think you can go all out on these bats. The only thing is they're going to be popular for sure.
Yeah, and just looking at the top stack tool that's free for you today here on Awesemo.com, the edge, if you will, is going to go to St. Louis as far as the top stack, the value there as well. But it's not like Arizona is at the bottom of this list. They're fourth as far as the percentage to be in the top stack. So I wonder, kind of looking at this, Gundaker, if there is any advantage knowing that more people are going to be on St. Louis and both of these lineups can mash tonight, if just taking Arizona and more of the fade or even lighter contrarian play makes more sense.
You popped the lid off of that cup. Anything can go down. Chase Foot can get wild. I obviously think the median range of outcomes for the Cardinals bats to be a little bit better just because they are just a better lineup than the D-backs when you put them on the table. But Ketel Marte, Eduardo Escobar, David Peralta, all guys that chip and chair on any given Sunday. So I don't mind those guys. It's the supplementary plays past them, like the Pavin Smiths, even Carson Kelly, not against the lefty. I prefer him against lefties. Rojas, Reddick, Nick Ahmed. Like it's very centered on a triangle of plus players and Marte, Escobar, and Peralta. So average range of outcomes, the Cardinals probably do better, but yeah, anything can happen in this field, and Carlos Martinez is not a good pitcher, and he hasn't been for a while. Just a 7.7% swing and strike rate, so definitely a chance that the D-backs can get on base, and they can be pretty aggressive when it comes to stealing bases as well, which is really what you like out of these chase-filled games, for some power, the heat to combat, neutralize that humidor maybe, and some bag swipage going on. No Tim LeCastro to have fun with that one, but still an attackable lineup. But I think the Cardinals just have a much more balanced selection to go to. Like you can give me a couple of variations of 4 Cardinals and I'm fine. After those 3 D-backs, it just gets kind of hard to love the other options behind Marte, Escobar, Peralta. So, yeah, it is a leverage play to lean D-backs over Cardinals, but it's probably not the median plus play.
Yeah, just high ownership, for a couple of these guys, right? And Goldschmidt 4,100. Looking at that, but for the most part, at least right on FanDuel, you're getting these guys, Alex, really cheap across the board when it comes to just individual plays. If you're looking at one-offs in this lineup here, I mean, Escobar's 3K, and other than that, I saw Arenado at 3,200. So you're under 3K for a lot of these guys, as well as high ownership we see for a couple, including Goldschmidt. So is that more maybe of an appealing play that you can not even have to stack, but maybe work a couple guys in as one-offs in these lineups, knowing, of course, that they're cheaper overall?
Yeah, I mean, this could be a great spot for a one-off. Dylan Carlson especially looks good because he's super cheap for his projected spot in the lineup, and a pretty talented prospect. And the weather here is going to make anyone look pretty good. So I think there's some potential there. It is a situation where it's probably going to be hard to make a unique lineup stacking up the cards because it is a really small slate. So if you do a card stack, it's just worth kind of taking into consideration that you might want to mix it up elsewhere.
Yeah, so just real quick, following up on that, Alex, with you, is there any bigger concern? I mean, both teams are projected right around 5 runs, and again, talking about the cost of some players, and from Gundaker looking at the benefits of both stacks, even if you were trying to get to Arizona on top of St. Louis. Is there anything with this game that would have maybe some pause or concern about running either one of these from a stack or individual lineup outside of the cost and trying to get to a unique lineup?
I mean, I think this is going to be the game of the night. So as far as bats, so it's kind of hard. I think it just might be tough today to come up with a really unique strategy because they are so good. I guess you could lean towards the Diamondback side. They do have a good matchup versus Carlos Martinez, like Gundaker mentioned. And they're not a very popular team. DFS is still banned in Arizona, so maybe not that home field bump. Although they just did legalize sports betting, I think. I don't know when that takes effect. And they got some guys with power. Carson Kelly is a great batter for the catcher position, and then you got guys like Marte, Rojas, Escobar that all can get it done. So that's kind of intriguing.
How you legalize gambling but not DFS, like betting in a sense, and not DFS is mind-boggling, right?
I think they legalized both. I just know it happened within the last month or something. So I don't know if people can play yet on Draftkings and Fanduel.
Well, we expect a heavy boost. Once it becomes fully legal in Arizona, we expect a heavy boost from that state in the Awesemo community. Is that fair? I mean, my goodness, let everybody out there in Arizona, as soon as this thing is live and legal officially, it should already been a member here, Awesemo Plus. But I would expect things start pouring in. So, your cousin, your brother, your sister from Arizona now in Phoenix, no excuses that they're not here with us.
Yeah.
Sorry.
my fiance and friends were taking a trip to Arizona like a year or two ago, and I was like, hell no, you can't play DFS there. So maybe the rest of us will finally get a check out some Phoenix or what else they got going on down there. But I don't think anyone from Arizona really watches this show, most likely.
So that will change immediately. But look, man, I'll tell both of you guys now, ever since this thing became full-on legal in PA, from DFS early to now sports betting, that's a huge part. Now, this is all pre-COVID and all, but that's a huge factor going to go. If I have a family member in a state where I can't legally bet, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to come see me.
Exactly. It's a difficult conversation to have with loved ones, but it's one that has to take place.
Good news as our spot shopper is, if it's globally or if it's legally, of course, there's always a bet to be placed, and you want to make sure that you're getting the best ones legally, of course, here. OddsShopper.awesomeo.com. It's where we go for everything. It's where we get lines set. It's where we get the necessity when it comes to, if you are involved in anything betting, and I keep telling people on this channel here that I do a couple of things during the week, a day, all revolving and circling around sports betting and in PA and Jersey. And this is the spot. This is now my Bible. This is where I go to in the beginning of the day, from props to all across the board, overs, unders, wherever you want. And they'll have a bunch of different books where you'll always be able to find the best value, so you can shop around. But the beauty of it is OddsShopper is doing that just right now for you. So make sure you hop on right now. Everything that you're going to get at Awesemo OddsShopper, the best lines available. It's the best way you can beat the house. OddsShopper.awesemo.com. All right, now we can get to, as I know you guys have been salivating, waiting to get into this later part of the slate with the A's and Angels and Ohtani, both, as we know, at the plate and on the hill tonight. So looking at, some ownership projections, as well as we have, where he is specifically as a pitcher. Gundaker, how often do you think you're getting to Ohtani tonight as far as exposure in your lineups?
On DraftKings, he'll probably be my highest owned pitcher out of circumstance. Cheapest of the really playable pitchers. Like, you feel like his floor isn't negative at 7.7K. 15 plus, really 20 plus is, I think there's only a few pitchers today with 20 plus fantasy point potential. He's easily one of them. And if we factor in, potential opposing matchups and park factors, he has a lot of check boxes being hit. And the Athletics projected lineup has really just two hitters with a sub 20% K rate against righties over the course of the last two seasons. That's Elvis Andrus and Jed Lowry. So plenty of strikeout potential and a plus park. And 7.7K is probably just too cheap, even on a full slate. So yeah, Ohtani will probably end up being my highest owned pitcher. And I think in my personal lines, we talked about how difficult it is to get different than the Cardinals lineup, because even the White Sox were going to be the chalk, and now out of necessity a lot of that's going straight to the Cardinals. I feel more confident in trying to get my leverage from the pitcher spot than the Cardinals, which is a rare thing because usually hitting is way more variable. But I kind of like the idea of being way down on Strasburg and just doubling up on Ohtani in my personal lineups, just to give myself some way to be different. And I think that's the approach I'm going from where I stand now. So I do love Ohtani quite a bit. And like I said, Chris Bassitt's going to be a mainstay in my lineups as well. The Angels lineup, a lot less menacing without Mike Trout in it. And then once you get past that cleanup spot, the Uptons and below, a lot of strikeout potential and not that much power. Really, just Ohtani, Rendon, Walsh is the bats I'll be like wincing against for power. And then from a DFS standpoint, when Ohtani pitches, you can't get his bat. And so it takes one stack off the board because you're likely not going to feel enamored with Rendon, Walsh, and then like Rojas, Lagarde. So I don't think the Angel stack will even be viable for me, just because you really can't stack with their best player. You just one off in a Rendon and a Walsh. So both pitchers in this game will probably be some of my higher owned pitchers, and Ohtani will probably be my highest owned.
Yeah, we have him projected just under 4 runs on the lineup builder here on Awesemo, Alex. So I'm just curious, on that same kind of line of thinking from Gundaker on this game, and especially knowing that it's a give and take with Ohtani. Are you looking at one or the other? I mean, Fanduel, there's a difference of 1,200, Bassitt being the cheaper option. So if you were looking at building something with the one pitcher, is there a difference or maybe a factor that would side on either Ohtani or Bassitt, assuming that you would have one or the other, just kind of narrowing the parameters here between the two of them?
Yeah, it's funny because Ohtani and Bassitt are like such polar opposite pitchers. But Ohtani is a really high strikeout pitcher that really struggles with control and doesn't get deep in games. Bassitt doesn't get nearly as much strikeouts, but he's better at going deeper in games. And it is surprising to see the Angels big underdogs here, but I guess without Trout, that's what this is starting to look like. I think the fact Ohtani gets more strikeouts means he's preferred on Draftkings, and Bassitt on Fanduel goes deeper in games, which you get more points for there with quality starts. So I do see that Bassitt is lower owned in the projections on Fanduel than Ohtani. So that might be a million on Fanduel, where I'm kind of looking the other way on Draftkings, where Ohtani is cheaper than Bassitt.
Got it. Okay. Just would there be any deciding factor for you, Gun, just going back to it as far as how you were talking about trying to get to both of these guys and just looking at it more from the one pitcher lineups of FanDuel as opposed to maybe being able to work in both on a lineup on DK?
No, but I do want to emphasize what Alex is talking about. Strikeouts are definitely a king on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, if you can dip into that 6th inning, get a shot at that quality start, and win, those points matter. And Chris Bassitt has given you 6 innings or more in all but one of his last 6-7 games, in a couple of games, including his last game, which was against the Angels. He had 51 DKP with 8 strikeouts. So Bassitt might be undervalued by the community looking at his ownership projection. So I definitely would like to emphasize that Bassitt should be on people's table as a play today, because he's been very, very strong. And like I said, there's probably gonna be a lot of Bassitt right now. Bassitt, Ohtani, Sonny Gray, probably my 3 highest owned. And I have Ohtani as my highest right now, but I definitely could dip that backwards into some Bassitt if I had to. But nonetheless, I'm going to have probably 4 or less pitchers in my 100 lineup. So I'm going to have ample exposure to all of them.
And you mentioned, just follow up as far as the opposite, from pitchers, we get that Ohtani, Bassitt, you hear the guys kind of breaking down the depths in which you'll see exposure on lineups, especially if it's a one pitcher lineup. But just looking at the difference, and it sounded like, and I'm asking Gundaker, it sounded like you would stay away from even one-offs more so with the Angels than with Oakland, assuming that you're not running a stack for either one of those in that lineup.
So if I want to one-off the Angels, I want to look at Bassitt's weakness, and he gives up power to lefties. There's only 2 lefties on the Angels I'd play. One of them I can't get credit for in Ohtani, so it'd be Jared Walsh by process of elimination. So I wouldn't stay away from Jared Walsh. I'd have him. But yeah, they very much limit what you can do to pick on Bassitt's weakness.
Anything there as before we hit this Dodgers-Giants game and we close out with Texas-Seattle tonight, Alex? Just looking at individual guys that you would maybe take advantage of from a cost standpoint as opposed to running a stack, especially if it's against Ohtani in Oakland.
Yeah, the one thing I'll mention here, the weather is extremely favorable to pitchers. It's only going to be 52 degrees in Oakland tonight. But that being said, doesn't mean we can't take some one-offs. Seth Brown really stands out if he's high in the order. He's got a positive platoon split versus Ohtani, and he has a 293 ISO so far. I don't expect him to be that good, but Oakland does have a history of being able to find these guys that aren't good and then they produce. So he's an option, but not. I don't see anyone that I'm particularly excited about.
All right, well, let's move to the Giants, the Dodgers game. Alex Wood was a name that came up earlier, just kind of looking at pitchers with the expectation that the White Sox and Orioles game is going to be washed out. We have heavy plays on Strasburg tonight because of that shorter game and the confidence game that it can be for him. So let's just flip this back. Alex, let's start with you here as far as just how your approach, if it's Alex Wood at all as a P2 or anything at all that you could make of what's expected to happen with the shorter start and then really kind of extending out with the Dodgers and what they're doing with their staff tonight with Price first.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling like I like the Dodgers pitcher here. I just don't know who it is. Nah, just kidding. Alex Wood, he's been pretty good this year. So the matchups are really tough for the Dodgers. But it's not there are no guys that really light up the leaderboard projections here. So Alex Wood is a reasonable option, especially given that a lot of the field will be on the Dodgers bats, which will give you some leverage. But the San Francisco could be intriguing too. They've been having a really good year so far with a win percent of like 60%. So I don't remember them being this good before. And Alex Wood definitely will help them win tonight. And it's a revenge game. So he'd be kind of the Giant I'm most interested in.
Yeah, and that's a really cool element to it here. And just a reminder, we got about 10 minutes left here, so you want to make sure that you're following across the board, not just here on the program, but at Awesemo MLB or our Twitter handle. You want to make sure you're liking, subscribing, and smashing away the notification bell so you're not missing shows and popping in 35 minutes late like me and asking what happened, and trying to get the stream to catch you up to everything. So just kind of going on that with what Alex just ended with about the revenge factor. How much do you even weigh that, Gundaker? And not just like, okay, this was 3 starts ago. I mean, he comes off his most recent start getting beat up by LA. So how much do you factor that in, especially with how close that most recent start was against the same team that we're trying to get an angle on tonight?
How much do I factor the revenge factor?
Yeah.
None.
Zero.
No, 0.
Like there's very. I figured you'd hit me with that.
Right. There's very few spots where something like yesterday, the Astros and Bauer, like there's actual bad blood there. Like I don't think Alex Wood lost sleep last night or the last week. I would say 6,900 is a nice price for Alex Wood considering his advanced metrics this season. His Sierra, xFIP, swing and strike rate, all really, really great. And if you just isolated those numbers with the 40 plus innings of sample size, that's probably too cheap for the level he's been playing at. We talked about the Dodgers. The Dodgers are a team that are kind of, I don't say, I guess overrated is the word against lefties. They really don't shell lefties like you would assume. And in a twist of fate, that Alex Wood has been extremely reverse splits. Like he's striking out righties at a 30% clip so far with a 0.53 home run per 9. It's the lefties that are getting him a 300 plus average, an 8% K rate. I think Max Muncy might have been one of the guys that took him deep last time. But right now I got just Muncy and Gavin Lux in this lineup. So obviously whatever Wood's throwing at righties, it's working. I do think the opportunity is a little too low at the price 6,900, so I'll have him. But understand, like I'm only getting to him because of the slate size and because of what's been taken away from us. Like if this is a full slate and I had 5 more viable pitchers, I probably don't gamble against the Dodgers, but it is possible to have good games against the Dodgers. Last night, Luis Garcia, the Astros pitcher, almost had 30 DKP. So it's not impossible for a pitcher to thrive in this spot, and it's almost an underrated spot considering the Dodgers ineptitude against left-handed pitching. So I will have some Wood. He'll be my lowest owned pitcher, but I'll have him.
Alex, how much exposure do you think you'll have to the Dodgers stack tonight?
It's hard to say because I like a lot of stacks, but don't love any of them. Dodgers, it does seem like they may be a little bit overowned today. But you might have some good values like Pujols at 2,600. And you got some studs like Betts and Muncy and Will Smith at catcher. So I don't hate the Dodgers, but probably not my top option today.
Fair enough. Any stack play here in either one of these? As far as moving away from the unknown, right, with the pitcher element here, San Fran can explode at times. So I wonder, as far as the San Fran stack, Gundaker, how much do you expect getting to these guys, or maybe especially on DK where you're paying a price, maybe it's 1 or 2 one-offs that you can more justify?
Yeah, so I think there's more revenge in the thought that the Giants are trying to prove themselves every game. They're in contention for this division right now, and this is an important win. Both the Dodgers and the Giants are 1.5 games back from the Padres. So these games count double, and the Giants can start putting some separation and trying to really prove they belong. It's hard to commit to a stack from where we're sitting right now because we don't really know who they're going against. It's not like the Dodgers bullpen is pretty strong. So even if it ends up being like a full-on bullpen game, it's not like it's a super plus pre-flop matchup. But you are just gambling on the talent of the bats to show up and play inspired baseball. So yeah, I would if the game turns into a 4-game slate like on FanDuel, like it's hard to not land here. Obviously, it's going to be extremely saturated by the Chase Field game and maybe the game we're about to talk about. But yeah, you can put 4 of these Giants in my lineup and I feel fine. Yastrzemski, Buster Posey's been having a great year. Alex Dixon, Dongo season. Slater had a pinch hit bomb yesterday. Like there's plenty of guys that like I don't feel tank my lineup, but it's not my first option.
All right, so just to make sure I get this correct, the revenge factor doesn't work on the mound, but it does on the plate, right?
It's well, I mean, if you get swept by a team, and then you're fighting for the division, like that in the locker room speech, that means more than Alex Wood standing up and say, "I used to play for them."
Perfect. Perfect answer, man. All right, let's end here. We'll get some home run picks before we get out of here as well. But the Rangers-Mariners game tonight in Seattle, it's the late one alongside the one in LA. At least we have an idea, Alex, of the pitching matchup here. So looking at way cheap options as far as a P2 is concerned on DraftKings, either one of these guys, especially knowing that you're paying minimum there on Texas, either one of these guys, Flex and Allard, jumped out to you as options, especially from the P2 standpoint.
Well, Allard, I'm a little bit worried about the pitch count here. So he hasn't started any games so far this year. And in this latest game on May 22nd, it was 5 days ago, so he could go up higher today. But he only went 20 pitches, so I think the most we're getting out of him today is probably like 70. So probably deserving of that 4K price tag.
Yeah, who in their right mind? And look, this is an amateur asking this question to you two who know your shit and then some. But where is the scenario that you would play this guy based off of what you just laid out, where he hasn't even gone 2 innings, right? In how many recent starts that he's had? So 3 was the last time on May 8th. So where is even the rationale in going to this guy? Just that he's 4K?
Well, I don't think there's a rationale. It's just like people are going to pick everyone. There's not much you can do with it. But this guy, I feel like I don't want to say he's a surefire like way to burn your money, but I would heavily recommend against going to him here. And Gundaker, maybe you can talk me into it.
I mean, like,
so.
for the sake of being devil's advocate, it would just be like he's a bat price, and you hope he gets you 10 plus like a bat would. But yeah, more than likely that's not the optimal play. Like that's just tanking you.
All right, so then let's take advantage of that, right? If we know that that's not the optimal play and stay as far away the hell you can from Kobe Allard, then what about stacking Seattle against Texas tonight, Gundaker?
So Allard's not a bad pitcher. He's just not going to be out there long. And then you dip into that Rangers bullpen, and you really don't know who's going to come out. I'm looking at this Wes Benjamin lefty threw 56 pitches yesterday. So he's probably the only guy I can rule out of this bullpen for them. So you might see Allard, you might see Taylor Hearn, another lefty, Ian Kennedy, fly ball righty. There's a lot of average pitchers. So you could, but it is the Seattle Mariners at the end of the day. So after Kelnick, Haniger, Lewis Seager, like it drops off a cliff. So there's not a high level of confidence there. But this could be one of those ugly games featuring 2 contact and below league average pitching for 9 innings that just gets there. And I do think I'm a little bit more interested in the Rangers side, not to bury the lead here, but the Rangers bats, guys like Adolis Garcia, the dude's on fire. Joey Gallo, we know he has power. I think Garcia is probably underpriced on DraftKings considering what he's done so far this season. If anyone takes the time to look up, I think he's got 15 or 16 homers already, a lot of stolen base potential. He's probably too cheap. And if he's going to have a cleanup spot or better on the road against a below average pitching staff and led by a guy like Chris Flexen, who's a pure contact guy, I'm gonna love that as a maybe late night hammer. So I can see him rising as one of my favorite one-offs. But I also don't think the Rangers stack is out of play for me. Obviously not my top option here, but on a 4-game slate, if this is a smaller way to get different, looking at this top stack tool, they're actually number 2 on the ownership. Yeah. So maybe I'm just a chalk donkey, but I like their potential in this spot more than the Mariners.
All right, last thing, Alex, before we get home run picks and get out of here, just looking at that, and you have them on our MLB, our top stacks tool, which is free for you, part, of course, of the Awesemo Plus package. It's $29.95 a week. It's easy. You get access to everything beyond MLB, every single thing that we have on there. Their top value as well when it comes to the stack. And Gundaker mentioned that they're third when it comes to the top stack percentage. But as far as value is concerned, they're the top stack. How much do you think you're going to be backing this squad here on a stack standpoint, knowing that there's a really good chance of value in return?
Yeah, I mean, Seattle is super cheap here, so like I said, that makes sense. They have a good chance of being the top value, although it might depend a little bit on the lineups that come out. I see Texas is pretty cheap too. The main factor that's not good here is Seattle's park is definitely more favorable to pitchers. So I think the matchup versus Flexen is kind of intriguing for Texas. They have a team total of almost 5. So I agree with Gundaker. That'd probably be the side I'd lean to.
All right. Speaking of burning your money, it may not be going with Allard at 4K. It may just be betting on Albert Pujols to hit a home run. But you know what? I feel lucky tonight. So what the hell? Gundaker, who's your home run pick? And we'll end with Alex on the deeper dive here today.
Paul Goldschmidt back in Arizona. Going to get standing ovation and send one over the fence.
Alex?
I like those. Definitely you guys are going for the ain't as good as I once was, but as good once as I ever was.
There's a theme.
So I guess I gotta pick another guy that fits that. And I went with Posey yesterday. I don't think he got a home run, but he's been hitting for huge power this year. Why not today?
Awesome. Great stuff, guys. I appreciate your patience with everything. Thanks again to all the people on the stream. Remember, leave us a like, Make sure you're subscribed. You want to hit the notification bell as well, at Gundaker, at Awesemo DFS, at Shander Show for me. Thanks, Tyler. We have a lot of things happening today here on the channel, including the tip-off at 5. So appreciate everybody hanging with us. Good night. Good luck.